Welcome to Cybertopia cast interviews. Tonight we are talking to Basil. Basil, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and your character from Cybertopia?
So I'm Basil, she's AZ. And so for Cybertopia, I play Clarity, who is best described as a hacker who has their own drone named Whisper. Clarity is non-binary like myself. They are also black. They wear their hair in, I believe at the time they were wearing it in short locks.
That rings a bell.
With those golden braid caps throughout their hair, because that's where they keep their, what did I make it, like a chain whip? I believe that's where they hide their chain whip weapon. When it's not in use, it folds down and it just becomes part of their hairstyle.
I love the idea of it's like a Marge Simpson kind of thing where anything you need, you just got to reach into your hair and pull it out. And it's like, oh, here's a chain whip. Here's a flying drone thing. What else can I hide in here? No, it's really cool. Most of the players didn't do that much description of their character's look, but you really quite went into detail on it. And that was really cool. Really get a fleshed out kind of figure of who Clarity is.
Yeah, what I really wanted to do, and I don't think it came up too often, but I wanted it to definitely be like Clarity keeps a lot of tech in their hair. So it's discreet, like there's, it definitely did not come up, but I know that I had it that Clarity probably had like some lock picking tools in there, like the pins in their hair.
Oh, yeah.
Hold it down in one of those braid clips. Also, like a very thin USB drive. I think that actually did come up in an episode because that was not in their pocket. I don't know if I
feel like it was like on the very first roll you did or something when you tried to hack into a door lock and it went wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like that.
I think so. Yeah. Something like that. It was hiding in their hair accessory. So definitely when I was coming up with my character, I was just, okay, I really want to go super cyberpunk, but also I really wanted to make sure that my character felt like a real lived in sort of like the lived experience of a black person being in this dystopian cyber future, still fashionable, but still wanting to do all this techno stuff. But I also did not want to give them what black people call the Killmonger cut, where it's just those short locks in the front.
Not going quite Afro-punk, but like, yeah, I get you. No, it's an interesting point, actually, because when I was writing the setting, right, I envisaged what a better future might look like in terms of social attitudes. So things like racism and xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, that sort of stuff aren't really a thing in the setting. But it's only set 30 years in the future. So there's definitely going to be hang-ups from the past where there are still some of those attitudes around. And I feel like, there'd still be societal differences between people of different color and that sort of thing. I don't know if it's... We'll talk about it later, but in season 2, I'm opening out the world. So maybe we'll be able to explore some of these themes as we get into season 2. I don't really have that much experience in all this sort of stuff, but we've got people like you who, you are a sensitivity consultant, aren't you? So maybe this is stuff that could come up and be dealt with in a suitable way.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm super excited for season 2 and how things are going to change and, what things stay the same and, what the new stakes are. And it's exciting and it's going to be fun.
So, I alluded there to your sensitivity consulting stuff that you do. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do in the TTRPG scene outside of Cybertopia?
Yeah, so outside of Cybertopia, I do a lot of various things at this point. I think
You are a busy person.
Yes. I think when I first joined up with y'all, I was not doing as much as I'm doing now. It's like every month there's something going on, which, I am always immensely...
And that's saying something, because when you joined Cybertopia, you were doing a lot. I think you were just after you'd finished crowdfunding Pelagos.
Yeah, and, just working on that, and then it just started kickstarting a bunch of things. It's like every month something new is happening, which is, again, I'm immensely grateful for, but it's just like, boy, that I really took off fast, huh? So outside of Cybertopia, I am a game designer and sensitivity consultant. Like Ben said, I can actually say this in the past tense now. I was working on Pelagos, but I have finished the game design.
Oh, wow.
Yes, at the time of this recording. It's currently at our lovely copy editor for copy editing. So it will definitely come out this year. I just don't want to put a firm date on it because the majority of our team is disabled. That was intentional when I hired them. We have multiple marginalizations. Many of us are disabled. Many of us are neurodivergent. Almost all of us are people of color. So I did have an actual deadline for Pelagos, but then real life happened and, I had some family stuff come up. So now I'm just kind of like, when it's ready is when it's ready.
Hey, deadlines are like guidelines, they are
Yeah.
malleable.
I will say for anyone wanting to hire me, this is only for like this particular project. All my other projects, I have met my milestone.
Yeah, when it's your own thing, it's a lot easier to just kind of shift the goalposts a bit. When it's like you've been hired for something, then yeah, there's contracts and shit.
Yes. As a sensitivity consultant, I've consulted for a number of things. I consulted for that Minecraft Dungeons and Dragons DLC. That was fun.
Really?
I've done some stuff. Yeah, they reached out to me. That story is actually kind of funny because they were just like, "Oh, we're working on this thing," and I was like, "Oh, cool." And then ages later, while I was updating my portfolio, I was like, "Oh yeah, what happened to those people in their little?" I thought it was just a mod, like their little mod thing, and then I went looking for it, and I was like, "Oh, that's what that was." Okay.
Amazing. Wow. Okay.
I was like, cool. I've also
Yeah.
I've done it for MCDM. I've worked for Evil Hat. At the time of this recording, they're currently doing backer kit for Stewpot. I did some consulting on that. Various other tabletop
How did you
games.
get into this stuff?
So the funny thing, how I got started is I think this was around when I was still working from home. So like during the start of the pandemic in like 2020.
Mm-hmm.
2020, 2021, somewhere around in there. I was on Twitter for something and I saw someone talking about sensitivity consulting and I started poking around and looking into it. And I was like, oh, hey, I could do that. So I spruced up my website and added a page for it, started adding information. When I first started, at first I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to start tweeting about it and advertising myself. And then one person was like, hey, I want you to do some consulting on my novel. And then it basically just kicked off from there. And then as I started talking about it more, as projects started coming out, more and more people were like, oh, hey, yeah, my buddy worked with you and I want to hire you for this too. And it's just kind of increased from there. And, the nice thing about being a sensitivity consultant is that, there's so many of us. So even if there's not something, this is what I always tell clients, like, even if it doesn't work out with me, can probably recommend like at least probably one, if not several
Assume
other.
there's like a little community of you, or I mean, we have this community within the TTRPG space of designers and stuff. I guess there's probably the same thing, but a smaller circle for you lot.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a smaller circle.
Everyone knows everyone kind of thing.
Yeah. It's always nice to when you get hired in bigger projects for things. It's like, oh, hey, you're here and you're here. Yay.
So what does it actually entail? Because I've got a vague understanding of sensitivity consulting, but what do you do when you're doing it?
Yeah, so it sort of depends on what the client wants. I've had it where they just want me to review some images where they're like, hey, we're working on this. We just want to make sure that we're not, falling into any pitfalls or stereotypes. And so here are some images. And so I'll look at them and then give feedback and then also give recommendations on how to fix it. Other times they're like, hey, here's my novel. Can you go through it? I'm worried about these issues. I have on my website a list of my areas of expertise. Sometimes it's like I've made this Black character. I'm not Black, and I want to make sure that their experience feels real, feels authentic. So I'll go through and look for that, or they want to check to make sure that they haven't engaged in ableist tropes, making sure that the disability representation is good.
Mm-hmm.
Very rarely, too, because I know some people are always worried about this. When you hire a sensitivity consultant, we will do our best to go through your piece, point out some areas that may need correction. But, frequently when I do it, I also point out areas that are really good. Like, this is good. Don't change this. I really
Nice.
love this about this character or this scene and how this builds on this part.
So kind of like being an editor.
Yeah. Some people call it sensitivity editing for that reason.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely have I ever had to say to a client, hey, just don't do this. Just take this out. This doesn't add anything and only creates harm.
But rarely, not never.
Yeah, I can still count on one hand the amount of times it's happened. And every time the person has been like, oh, I was not aware of that. Yeah, that can go.
Okay.
I'm just gonna throw that right into the garbage.
Do you get much pushback from clients?
Honestly, I think I've only gotten pushback like once.
I suppose most of the time people have come to you because they want this and they're open to it. It's not like they're being made to or they're doing it because they have to, sort of thing.
Yeah. Basically. And I know I was interviewed by somebody in the UK. It was something academia related. I think they were writing an academic paper,
All right.
possibly for their master's, possibly for their bachelor's, like honors degree. But anyway, they were writing this paper about the backlash going on in the UK about sensitivity consultants, readers, editors, however you
Mhm.
want to phrase it, and how I think it because it had to do with how they rewrote a little bit of I think it was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory about the Oompa Loompas
Right.
and changing some of the backstory on that, which surprised me. Not that they were doing it, but that I had always assumed the Oompa Loompas were orange, and they were not. They were a very offensive caricature.
Definitely at least an allegory, yeah.
Yeah, it was not great. And so
Mhm.
that got revised, and I guess there was some backlash over there. And I mean, there's also that over here in the US where people just think, oh, these people come in and they tell you, this is bad and that your work is unwoke or whatever. And
Mhm.
you just kind of have to ignore that because one, it's not true. And two, all that we do is we make your work better.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think like one of the things that's important to remember is if you can, you definitely want to hire more than one sensitivity consultant because we're just one person.
Mhm.
I don't represent the entirety of Black culture. So I might point something out, but then another Black person is like, actually, you know what? I think that's fine. Or actually, what I wanted to flag was this other thing. So, but I also recognize that, much like hiring anyone, it's expensive and we live in a capitalistic health society.
Yeah.
And now more than ever, money is tight. So that's also why on my website, not for companies, y'all got money. If you are an actual company like Wizards of the Coast
Yeah.
or Apple or like Google, then no,
Mhm.
you have money and you need to give it to me. But
Yeah.
if you're a little indie person or if writing your first novel, I have reduced rates. I have modified payment plans for people I have either worked with in the past or people I am aware of who I know are, I want to be like a normal human being because what is normal, but like I
Yeah.
know that like this is not going to cause problems later. I've seen your interactions. You seem fairly decent. I also sometimes do sensitivity consultations in trade because one of the things I'm bad at is layout and I hate doing it. That's
Oh
why
god,
I
it's
hired
awful, isn't it, right? I hate layout.
yes, that's why I hired my friend Ennio to do the layout for Pelagos because I'm just
Nice.
graphic design is not my passion and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So sometimes I will do work in trade where if I do some consulting on your thing, maybe you could do layout for me.
And there's collaboration and stuff. This is a great space I've found for people just working together and coming to deals, coming to understandings. And I suppose the Cybertopia podcast is a key example of that as well. I would love to be able to pay everyone to participate in the show, but I don't earn anything from this. And yeah, it's a it's a whole task. But we're all working together to create something amazing, and sometimes that's what these projects are. And if we were to somehow end up making money from this thing, it would get spread out to everybody and whatnot. And with Kickstarters and projects and things where you're creating products, then you can come to deals and you can make arrangements with people to work on things, like you said, in trade or revenue share and that sort of thing. So there's plenty of options out there if you're not one of the big companies that should just be hiring people.
Yeah, definitely. And I know the discussion of actual plays and compensation has been coming up recently, Dr. Friedman, and the survey that she has out about actual play and compensation. I've been a part of one, possibly two, Time is a Soup, but at least one actual play where, well, I've taken part in several where they were like, if people tip, then we divide it evenly amongst everyone. And then
Mhm.
there was one where it's like, okay, you'll get paid this much for each recording session. And I've seen plenty of casting calls for like sponsored APs where people will get paid. But I know that just because I follow a lot of actual play producers and performers on Twitter, I know that when they actually put out the numbers, nobody generally, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think nobody has.
Unless you're one of the big ones making very little. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I'd love to pay the cast for this, but there are 16, well, now 15 of you all, and That's a lot of people to pay. If I'm paying, I don't know, $50 a episode, that's oh geez.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, maybe one day when I'm rich, you know?
I think there was a Rascal article about it too. That's exactly why more companies should be sponsoring actual plays, especially because these do so much heavy lifting for the company.
Yeah.
Especially when it's Paizo or Wizard of the Coast or some of the other ones that definitely probably have a budget for this. Or like when people take video games and make them actual plays. I know right now on Twitter, some people I follow are talking about wanting to do a Hades 2 themed actual play. And now I always get these two confused. It's super giant and not super massive games, right?
There's so many.
I always forget. Yeah, super giant.
I work in the video game industry and I can't keep track of all these names. And there's so many that are very similar as well. Yeah.
I don't want to be like super giant games has super giant money, but there should probably at least be some money in the budget for supporting some actual plays. And if not, you have the ability at your video game company to persuade the higher ups that it only works out to your benefit. You know, you have these people promoting your game and then more people will check out the game. Like it's a nice feedback loop.
Okay, talking about podcasts and actual plays and stuff, let's get back to Cybertopia a bit. So, clarity. First mission was Hostile Takeover, which was the drug den one. And then you were in the underground bomb unit of the finale mission as well. How did you find the experience of doing this actual play?
You know, it was a lot of fun. I know I kind of joined in a bit late because it's around the time where I think I was constantly having to deal with either migraines or back pain or something.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
Yeah, where my health was just terrible back then. It just felt like every time it was time to record, my body was like, hey, you want a migraine?
I mean, in fairness, you were probably a bit burnt out from all the Pelagos stuff and that stuff that was happening around the start of that year as well. So, yeah, I have a vague recollection. I mean, it was a long time ago, but yeah. I mean, I loved Clarity. They were a great impact on the game.
So I joined in kind of late, but I didn't feel out of place. You know, I was worried for a second that like I wouldn't really know what was going on. It kind of feel like when you watch sitcoms and they get the rocks to show up or something, like it's like, oh, guest starring this person. And it's like, oh yeah, you remember your cousin Louie, and it's, you know, it's like Matt Damon or something, and it's like, what?
I guess the whole format kind of helped in that because in that Hostile Takeover mission, none of the other characters had played together before. So you were slotting into a entirely new team in general, even though everyone had played a mission previously, none of them had played together. So it wasn't like you were being shoehorned in or anything.
Yeah, it felt like a really easy transition as we all just kind of woke up from those little cryopod thingies. And I also like to think that even though that was the first time Clarity was on screen, they were probably just kind of wandering around. And I feel like probably just playing games on a computer and just kind of avoiding work until finally they were like, hey, if you want to be here, you've got to actually work. And it's like, okay, fine.
Whisper doubles up as like a Nintendo DS or something.
Exactly.
So Clarity, was there any kind of inspiration behind them?
Gosh, you know, I think Clarity just ended up being all the design ideas I had at the time for characters I wanted to play.
Cool.
I had never done a cyberpunk sort of thing before. And I know one thing I always wanted to do is, okay, well, I always want to play a hacker. And then as a kid, I'm super into anime now and I was super into anime then, but I just, as a kid, I was just obsessed with the idea of a chain whip.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool item.
He was such a little weirdo, like affectionately, but gosh, it was so weird. So I was like, okay, I want them to have a chain whip. But then I was like, well, you know, we're not that far in the future. You cannot really be wandering around town with this clearly deadly weapon on your hip, like you're Indiana Jones. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out a way to have this whip, but then also, you know, and I was like, I love the idea of like, you know, things hiding in other things because as a kid, I watched Totally Spies, so I was just super obsessed with the idea of, oh, you know, this tube of lipstick is a laser, or this compact is a communication device, or like this hair clip can pry open a door, or this makeup palette can hack this panel. All of that just sounded super fun. So I wanted something similar for Clarity. And then otherwise, I think that was still in the stage where I was trying to think of a personality for Clarity. And I don't think it really came together until the actual mission started. And then I was bouncing off players' interactions with Clarity. And so they just kind of became this quiet, introverted person that's occasionally cracking jokes, but mostly spends their time talking to their drone.
I love Clarity. They've got this whole thing that there is a world within them, I think, and when they're looking at a scene or examining a situation, you have that internal monologue that comes out of them, and the interactions, especially between Clarity and Whisper, brilliant. Like, it's a little kind of sibling thing almost there. It's really fun.
Yeah, I wanted Whisper to feel like less like a pet and more like, you know, like that thing you do when you're like in elementary school and none of the kids will talk to you. But I guess that was also the inspiration I drew was, I do have a sibling, but Briar is older than me, so they were always in the older grade. So as a kid, I was bullied for being neurodivergent, but I wasn't being bullied for being Black and Indigenous. So I spent a lot of time by myself. So you just kind of construct your own sort of friends. Like I never had an imaginary friend, but I would put random things together and make other things and then just enact these dramatic sort of plays with them. I would do that classic thing where you push pins into an eraser to make like a little animal. And then I would just make two of them and they would go on grand adventures. And that was kind of the vibe I wanted for Whisper. Like Clarity made this companion for themselves so they wouldn't be lonely and have someone to talk to. And, R2D2 a little bit. So like Whisper definitely beeps and boops and whistles and whatnot.
Man, this makes the kind of sacrifice of Whisper that you had in the finale so much more impactful. Like, oh, wow, they did that with the thing that means so much to them, that is such a part of them, and they sacrificed Whisper in that way. And I wonder if that's going to be a big thing in season 2 for Clarity to recover Whisper.
Yeah, definitely. When I did that, I know for Clarity, it was, if you had to choose between like saving children and saving your companion drone that you made that is your friend, it's like, the children are more important, but Clarity definitely is emotionally devastated about losing Whisper and definitely, is definitely working to repair them, but is also still in the habit of turning to Whisper and talking to them, and they're not floating next to him. It's like, right, I still have to fix you. And I feel like at one point, probably Clarity did the sock puppet thing, but then was like, this isn't working. I hope nobody saw this. And just...
That's hilarious. So talking about the finale there, you in particular were probably the most exposed character to the big moral issue of the whole finale mission of, oh shit, there's innocent children. You were the first person to realize that. You were the first person to see them. How did that all feel for you? I know that I kind of gave out a whole bunch of warnings beforehand of like, this is going to be a bit iffy. Please be okay with it, sort of thing. Like, how did that feel during the session for you?
So I will say after that session, I was super sweaty.
Oh, man.
Because I was just like, okay, well, I know none of the kids are going to get harmed, but that does not preclude the adults getting harmed or even my own character. And I was thinking at the time, I was like, oh, I really like Clarity. But I was like, well, I guess I can roll up another character if I have to. And it was really tense. Like the tension was really well done. And everyone trying to keep the little robots with the bombs.
Man, you lot really fought for that. The standing in the doorway and the throwing everything out, and the ultimate sacrifice of Whisper. Yeah, you definitely were going all out on that. Like, I imagine this tiny little stairwell bottom, the basement entrance there, and you were just clambering around trying to stop these robots from moving. And the robots, they're just robots. And as much as they'd been kind of personified by you all during that whole mission, that whole thing was hilarious. The naming, the ponchos, everything. What was it? Widget, Debbie. Oh, what was the third one called?
Howie, because I have the chat open.
I was thinking Harry. No, Howie, Widget, and Debbie. Yeah. Man, that was so good. And it's funny because each of the 4 sides of that finale mission had extremely different tones. And your group you had the hardest part. Like I said, it was the one protecting the innocents. Nobody else in the whole finale knew about the kids and the people in the village under the basement. You were the lot that was dealing with the heavy side of this all. But you still managed to bring in a whole bunch of levity with it, with the robots. And when you went off down the sewer tunnel to kind of scout ahead, and the other 2 stayed behind and were just having a kumbaya moment with the robots and stuff. And it was really great to get that kind of balance to the session.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It felt like, okay, we had our fun, but now it's time to get serious, which I
Yeah.
think also sort of encapsulates Clarity a bit. Like Clarity, as you were saying, definitely has their own inner world. But what I really wanted to convey in that scene with the robots was that, Clarity knows how to have fun,
Mhm.
but Clarity is also willing to give up everything to save children and save people in need. So, like blocking the doorway, using the chain whip to try to hold on to, I think, one of the
Mhm.
robot's legs or his chest,
Yeah.
physically trying to hold on to it and not let it go through the door.
Yeah, and I mean, even before the shit really hit the fan, when you got to that stairwell before the robots came up and you were like, we need to make sure this is the right place, and you're doing the hacking and the scanning and trying to use the devices to figure out, is this correct? This doesn't feel right and stuff. Yeah, like you said, it was very tense. And in a lot of the episodes, the shit does hit the fan in the second half. But in this particular session, the switch was so dramatic and instant. As soon as those robots' lights turned red or whatever it was, oh shit, it's go time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking at the time, I was like, well, having worked with digital maps before, I was like, maybe we're just on the wrong layer and we're just on the wrong floor and we just need to go up another floor or go back down. Or when's the last time this map was updated? Maybe it
Mm.
has the wrong one loaded. And I remember thinking, okay, maybe I could have Clarity hack one of these robots, but there's three of them. If I get this wrong, I don't think if
Mm.
they're here to blow up this building, which means that it would not be contained to the stairwell. And I was like, well, that's just not an option. I'm like, so we're just gonna have to figure something else out.
Yeah, and actually that's a good point because it didn't quite come up, but it nearly did. But what I've got written into that mission is that if you disable one of the robots, the other two explode. They are linked in that way. There's that failsafe. So either you take them all out at exactly the same time, or they will all go. And it's basically an impossible situation to stop that from occurring. The only success there is to save the people somehow, which you managed to do. Of course, you didn't manage to save yourselves, but somehow you survive into season 2. So after going through that experience, what do you think Clarity will be thinking now and into the future?
I definitely think one of the things that Clarity was thinking, especially during that mission, which is why I decided not to try to hack the robot, because I was like, everyone else does not have sufficient hacking skills, I don't think.
Mm.
But I definitely think like the thought that Clarity had when all the robots exploded and the explosion was about to hit them was, I knew I should have backed myself up to the cloud or something, something along those lines. Just like a brief moment of maybe I should have done that despite the many different ways that can go horribly.
Mm.
And there could be like a clone of Clarity wandering around, depending on like how you get uploaded. That
Yeah.
sort of thought. And so I think what Clarity is probably sort of thinking now as we move into season 2 is just these people cannot be trusted. Not the ones that they went on a mission with. The organization itself, this entire system is flawed.
Mhm.
There is no safety here. And I think also a little bit of I was right because I feel like Clarity joined up, but definitely in the back of their mind, they've always been waiting for, like, okay, where is it? Where's the torment nexus that they have, down in the basement? Where's the puppy grinder? And it's like, finally they've revealed themselves. And it's like, well, time to take matters into my own hands and liberation by any means necessary.
Interesting. So you think Clarity would go on the kind of all-out warpath trying to take down Amazing Core?
Yeah, I think like not in a direct way. I feel like Clarity would definitely become like the person in the chair working behind the scenes
Oh, yeah.
a little bit like, and I have not seen this all the way through. So I apologize to people who have seen this anime and my reference is incorrect. But I think much in the same way as the laughing man in Ghost in the Shell, where,
Ah, yeah.
it's like that's the symbol that they're using for rebellion, but it's not actually them being present. So I feel like Clarity would probably do a lot of kind of like what Anonymous does now in our reality. A lot
Mhm.
of disruption, leaking of things, of data,
Okay.
revealing information, but not actually being on the front lines. They do a lot more of coordination.
Yeah.
And I think maybe once they get Whisper fixed, maybe then they would feel a bit more confident going
Uh-huh.
out. But I definitely also foresee Clarity changing up their style completely because they're like, they know what I look like. And one thing, because I've really gotten obsessed with them, is I would probably give Clarity goddess braids because one, they are just so stunning.
What a goddess braids.
Yeah, so what Clarity currently has is like short locks, which
Uh-huh.
go down to her ears or her shoulders, which are tightly coiled hair. Goddess locks are these braids that go down even farther. Looking at an image,
Okay.
they're much longer and they're also
Okay.
a much looser style, which is, well, depending on the style of goddess braids that you get. They start out tight at the top and sort of loosen
Cool.
out as
You
you
could hide a lot
go.
more stuff in them.
Yeah, you can hide a lot of stuff in there, but I also wanted to sort of visually represent that Clarity is trying to loosen up a little and
Yeah.
sort of free themselves from their previous notions. And I think I also wanted to touch on the fact that, in our society, there are only, depending on where you work, especially with oppressive society like white supremacy and how that shows up in the workplace, there's only like a small subset of acceptable hairstyles for Black people, especially people who are more on the femme presenting side or people who are just perceived as a woman,
Yeah.
which happens to me a lot, which is annoying.
Yeah.
But so this sort of style where you work may or may not be acceptable, but just wanting to break free from the usual option of, oh, well, you could do a bob or a ponytail. And it's like, no, I want to actually showcase more of myself, more of my hair, more of my style. And probably also, I think with Clarity's hair, one thing I want to do is introduce color to it. So also because I personally have gotten into hair wax products, which
Ooh.
are really great for Afro textured hair. It's like dyeing your hair, but without using harsh chemicals.
Okay.
And so it washes out. So it's really easy. It's like that's how I briefly turned my hair purple. So
Oh,
definitely, I
cool.
think that would be one of the things that Clarity would use, once they fix Whisper and they're back out in the field, so to speak, because you can do some really interesting colors and styles. And I think much in the same way, back in the days of slavery in the United States and how cornrows and certain braid styles were used as coded messages to communicate with other slaves as to, what the plans were and what they were doing.
No way. I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. But yeah, much in that way, I want to do that, but with color. So I feel like with Clarity's hair now being this long, there's definitely different styles that they can do where in one moment you can see the other layers of their hair. It's like, oh, maybe this is blue and green, and that means we're safe to do this action at what we discussed previously. Or maybe this color is
That's
this
cool. Yeah, I like
beautiful
that.
auburn color. So it still looks normal on them. It could be normal, but just like it doesn't look suspicious. They could be out getting groceries.
That's really cool. It's interesting. Nox, who's played by Pan, their character has like a techno wig kind of thing that also like changes color. And I love Pan's description of it. He describes it like a slowly moving octopus. So there's some really cool kind of similarities there of the hair doing different things and having different uses and symbolisms to them. So that's some cool stuff. Do you have any favorite people that you played with or anyone from other episodes that you really enjoyed hearing and would like to play with?
Oh gosh, I really enjoyed playing with the one Punched a lot.
Bludgeon.
Yes.
Yes. KO. Yeah.
Every scene that he was in was a lot of fun. I feel like getting a chance to interact more with Clarity and their character would be super fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun with everyone that I played with, and I feel like I also have a lot of fun with all the people that I didn't get to play with.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting you and everyone else mixed up a bit more and into other groups and stuff. And one of my aims is to have you kind of be in a more kind of stable group for 4 or 5 sessions or something so you can really develop those bonds and connections and stuff and relationships. Do you have any favorite moments of your own for Clarity? I know I definitely do.
I definitely think one of my favorite moments was when they confronted that guy in the building and Clarity was trying to calm them down. It's just like, no.
Yeah, that's it.
Soup is great. And it just, it was just in that moment, I was like, I have no idea what I can say to calm this person down. And then I just had the straight thought of, I'm hungry. When is the last time I had a bowl of soup? And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's go with that. And I think literally after we finished that session, I wandered over to my siblings' room and I was like, Briar, can we make soup soon? And they were like, sure, but it's late. You want soup right now? I'm like, no. I just mean like this month. And you don't remember whether we ended up having
It
soup.
was so out of left field. It was hilarious. They're just out of nowhere. I was like, soup? What? And it was just perfect. The encapsulation and the role worked as well, right? So that whole situation just turned from him being scared shitless of everything to him just being confused, and that is better.
Yeah, because I really was worried that he was going to get so freaked out that he was going to try to either like jump out that window or like run down the stairs and then trip and fall. And I was like, then we won't get any information.
I've run that mission before where it has gone terribly wrong. And yeah, I think actually the very first time I play tested that one, I had a guy who described his character as a combat electrician, and he'd set everything about his character up for tasering people and electrically restraining people and stuff. So he had a +10 to the roll to try and restrain this guy, and he rolled a nat 1 on it and ended up frying the guy.
Gosh.
So yeah, it can go very, very badly wrong. But no, it was amazing, and it was such a great RP moment, and to end out the whole kind of mission with that occurring, it was just brilliant. And yeah, I think it was a really great time for Clarity to really get the spotlight on them, and yeah, it was a lot of fun for sure. So something else about season 2 is that you no longer have the resources of Amazing Core behind you. So you're going to have dramatically reduced points in skills and items. I'm assuming that something that you'll be wanting to keep with you as an item will be Whisper. Of course, they are heavily damaged, so you're going to be wanting to fix them up or whatever. Is there anything else about Clarity that you're going to be wanting to keep especially? I suppose the iconic chain whip.
Yeah, I think with the chain whip, I fully expected it with the way that I designed it. It has segmented panels along with it because that's what allows it to collapse and fold up. I think probably in the wake of that explosion and especially exerting so much force, because I think I thought at one point I had wrapped it around a robot's ankle, but then I was also holding onto the stairwell with my other hand or something.
Rings a bell, yeah.
And so I feel like all that strain on it probably exceeded what Clarity had designed it for. Like this thing is meant to like occasionally attack people, mostly restrain, mostly trip.
Yeah. And those were strong robots.
And I don't think it ever came up, but like in a pinch, Clarity could use it to swing from something, but it is very much only balanced to their weight. And it would definitely be like something you do it, but then, you know, you hear something inside the mechanism creak and snap, and it definitely would not fold back up until they fixed it. So I think after that explosion and everything, it's definitely got scorch marks on it. There are pieces that are just completely messed up. Panels are bent backwards on itself. So I think it still works as a whip, but like a costume whip. Like it works. It is a whip in the sense that you could hit someone with it and you could trick someone with it. But if you tried to use it to keep someone from moving, it would probably snap in half at this point. So I think its moderately damaged chain whip would probably be its new description. Or I think it probably malfunctions a little bit too. Maybe when Clarity tries to use it as a whip, maybe it doesn't do the motion correctly. Maybe it gets all janked up and looks like a Tetris piece instead, like the little squiggly shaped one instead. And it just kind of locks up like that. And you hear sounds that you did not hear from when the chain whip was working properly. It would be like,
This is a crunchier whip than I'm used to, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely like probably after every use until Clarity fixes it, they have to get out this little hammer that they keep on their hip, like a little tool belt, like a little small hammer, and sort of like hammer the plates back in place to get the mechanism going again. So I feel like the whip probably becomes more of either a distraction or, okay, we have knocked out this person. We can tie up their ankles with this.
I wonder if Clarity might go down a bit more of a engineering-y kind of route, because like previously they were a lot more of a coder, programmer kind of hacker. Would they go into a more technical kind of field so that they can do the things like repair their whip and repair Whisper?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because, without those resources, it's a lot harder to fix things when you break them. And so I feel like Clarity's main priority is fixing Whisper. And then when they need a break and they start getting too bummed out that their friend is still broken, they'll get out the books and they start looking things up online, whatever the 30 years from now equivalent is to like Reddit or Printable or whatever. Looking up stuff on archive.org on how to repair things and getting the tools needed and carefully just sort of working on the chain whip. The chain whip definitely is also where Clarity tries out the new skills they learned before doing it on Whisper. So I think also probably because they don't have access to those resources, it's not as sleek and as smooth and all one color like it used to be.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
imagined it, since it was supposed to be like a gold hair cuff is what I was thinking of. This would be gold. Now it's probably a few colors.
Mm-hmm. Just kind of jury rigged together.
Clarity is trying to make it look like intentional, but it's definitely, oh, this section is gold, but this section is silver. This section is this kind of bronze color. So I think now when it eventually becomes collapsible again, it probably will not be a hair cuff anymore. It will probably maybe be more like, I don't want, not a scrunchie. I need to do some research, but like a different hair option because it's probably also because they're going to have to like strip out some parts. It's probably going to be a little bit, either a little bit longer or a little bit shorter than it was before. So that's going to change how it looks when they put it in their hair.
I love the level of detail that you go into when you think about this sort of thing. And also when we're in the missions, you're thinking about, I remember a conversation about the entranceway to the warehouse in Hostile Takeover where you're like, I'm trying to think back of when I've seen loading bays in real life. And I'm like, I hadn't really considered what those sort of things look like because everything I do is kind of theater of the mind. I just like, yeah, it's the loading bay and that's all I think. And then you're like, oh, how do these things look? Does it have a ramp? Has it got a raised bit and stuff? Like,
yeah, that's only because I think at the time I was still working for the Department of State at this museum that had a loading dock. So, yeah, some of the government buildings around here have different styles for how their loading docks are set up. And so some of them just have, I think the one that ended up being in the mission, some of them do have ramps, some of them are just, there are no stairs. The one at my job currently has some stairs and a very small dock, but the one at my previous job was very high up. And I think also had a ramp, but that's because they were moving museum items. So you kind of need that ramp, and you also need the height a bit more for a bigger truck because you're moving, say, cars.
Yeah, I mean, you have some very interesting frames of reference for some of this stuff, and it comes across in the episodes. I guess we've got a massive diversity in the cast because we've got people of color, we've got people of all different ethnicities and locations and backgrounds and stuff. It's been a real pleasure having such a large cast and having it not be entirely white men. So no, it's been really cool having such wide perspectives on everything. So you mentioned about Clarity kind of becoming, I kind of picture it as like a watchtower oracle kind of person back in the HQ, connecting with a lot of people like online and stuff. Do you think that there'd be the kind of person that would try to join up another group? Obviously, you've got all of the ex-Amazing Core people who are screwed over. There's still going to be a lot of factions and other groups out in the world. Do you think they'd try and join up with one of those or start their own or anything like that?
I think if Clarity did join up with the group, that they would have to have observed them for like at least a couple of months just to see what they were about, see if there's anything weird. Definitely doing extensive background checks on people.
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to get screwed over again.
Yeah. They're definitely a lot more cautious this time around. And I think also for that reason, I feel like Clarity would not start their own group, but I feel like a group would form around them. Where it would be like if Batman had like a fan club, and they all just went out and started doing good and cleaning up parks and stuff. So Clarity would not encourage them, but would also like not get in their way. And I think probably despite themselves, I think probably like once or twice, if there was such a group built around them, they'd probably be like, hey, don't go over here. That's not safe. Coded messages or whatever. I was kind of feeling like, oh, okay, well, I didn't really want to start a group, but I'm also not going to sit here and let these people get arrested for trying to do good.
Yeah, I mean, Clarity is a very caring kind of person in that they very much were at the forefront of wanting to save all those people in that bottom of that building. And even when you were doing the drug den clear out kind of thing, you were kind of careful about it and not wanting to just scorched earth the whole place and stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like Clarity would be, I guess, a central-ish kind of figure. And coordinating, like you said, yeah, I can see this happening. That's a cool kind of image. And I've got some ideas for NPCs and things that I think would work very well with that kind of character. Yeah, I can see some things like that coming in season 2. Is there anything you yourself would like to see in season 2? Is there a character arc you'd like to see them go through?
gosh. I think for clarity, I would really love to see them come out of their inner world a bit more. And they definitely know already how to trust people, but I think just sharing more about, like, they trust that, okay, this person I'm working with is going to help me get the job done, or, you can't trust organizations and corporations, but you can trust individual people. But I think putting themselves out there more, actually being physically present, because definitely I think with this they've withdrawn a bit. They're sort of hiding themselves, becoming part of a community, whatever that community looks like, and just sort of being unafraid to be like, I'm here and physically present in this moment with these people, sharing my likes and dislikes.
So they're not just going to hide up in the watchtower and be hidden away. They want to be amongst the people.
Yeah, just sort of seeing that growth. Yes, they had a setback and they're hiding away currently, but just learning to open themselves back up and engage in the world and, making some friends that aren't drones. Like, I feel like Clarity ended up with some work friends, but not actual friends. Like, I would like Clarity to make some friends that aren't robots, that aren't machines.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. I think possibly, yeah, something that was maybe missing from season 1 a little bit is kind of social interactions and social encounters. I guess with season 2, putting you out into the wider city and that you'll be able to seek out those sorts of interactions and connections. And that is something that I'm aiming for a lot more in season 2. Season 1 was very much, here is your mission. You're going to go to this specific place and do this specific thing. And it's all kind of not so much railroady, but contained. I am going to open it out to you and the other players to determine exactly what you want to do and wherever you want to go. And you're going to have free reign. So you can decide what part of the city you want to go to and what groups you want to interact with and what you want to look for or try and do. So yeah, you'll have that full player agency, which will be a complete flip from season 1, where it was very much your agency is contained to this place and this thing. And speaking of which, I'm doing a kind of faction and city building game where you'll take control of a faction that you create yourself and determine through random card pulling mechanics and stuff how the factions in this city develop post the Amazing Core finale destruction. It's going to be really interesting to see where you end up going down with that and how the new factions that develop grow and interact with each other. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how you and the others shape the world to your own liking and where you want to go with it in season 2. And it's going to be a big change for me personally because I am not used to just giving over control. Season 1 was pretty much all of the missions were the ones taken out from the book that I wrote when I first wrote this game. So everything was pretty structured. And now I'm just going to be like, okay, over to you lot.
Ooh, exciting.
So yeah, I think we've pretty much covered everything there. We talked a bunch about your work earlier and stuff that you were doing at the start. And generally, you've got a lot going on right now. Is there anything specific you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, let's see.
Anything you're allowed to tell us about.
Yeah, I'm like, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, you'd think I'd remember, but there are several things that are under NDA. So I'm going to the portfolio section of my website.
Are you doing any more crowdfunders after Pelagos? Because that was a pretty good success, I think.
I am toying with the idea because I've been wanting to get one of my games physically published, but it's too soon to talk about that. I'm still weighing my options and thinking about what I want to do and which way I want to proceed. So currently, though, I did some writing for All the Witches. I'm doing some consulting for the Stormlight RPG. I did some writing for back channels for Backwater Games. I'm doing some writing for...
Man, you're involved with some cool people.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm working on. I'm trying to think. There is something that I was just working on that is not under NDA. Yeah, here we go. This is what I actually do want to talk about because I'm excited because I did some sensitivity consulting for Little Wolves, Realm of Folk and Fae, where you play as basically these werewolf shifters who are going around the lands, the free folk, and solving problems, helping people. From what I've seen, it's super fun. The art is gorgeous. The game design is fascinating. It's actually kind of funny. I was super hyped for this game before Danaberry Press reached out to me, and then they were like, hey, consulting for this? And I was just like, oh my gosh, yes. I've been so hyped for this game to come out. I'm just so excited. The other thing I consulted for was Cloud Empress Life and Death. The entire setting of Cloud Empress is so fascinating to me because there's just bugs like everywhere. I don't want to like distill it down to that function, but just the setting of this world fascinates me. And usually I'm not like a big bug fan. I mean, I'm still not, but like in general, bugs are gross.
Yeah.
But the way that this is presented, and I did some consulting for this sort of standalone adventure, and just getting to read through it, and the characterization of everyone was just immensely fascinating. And I feel that people who play this are going to have a super fun time. Otherwise, everything else that I am currently doing is super secret. So you'll see that when it comes out. But I can say, at least for myself, I'm also working on a number of different projects, my own tabletop games, as I remind myself about the ones that haven't been finished yet. I'm also exploring some options about presenting games outside of the traditional sort of like PDF download. I've been poking around in the program Obsidian, which through the help of some plugins, you can play tabletop games in there. You can draw cards. So I'm working on some things on that end. If you follow me on Twitter, you've noticed that my vanity plate handle currently says Basil is the Damned. That is a reference to the game I'm currently working on, The Damned, which is based off of the true story of the time I got blood on a saint's tomb and the resulting issues that came out of that, and the lingering guilt that I still have because this is when I went overseas. And our chaperones decided that the best option was just to not tell the people at that church that I had done so. I also want to clarify because I don't want anyone to think I did this on purpose. I did not. I was pushed and I tripped and I accidentally got blood on that tomb. So that's basically what this game is based on, because there was some more weird events after that and just oddness. But basically, you are a person who has spilled blood on this tomb, and you suddenly hear the voice of a saint promising you divine glory and all of these things. But there's also the voice of the serpent promising you freedom. And so it's a sort of back and forth kind of deal.
Cool.
And I've been working on this game for a while because originally I thought maybe to do it Discord, but now I'm thinking probably Obsidian. I'm still sort of playing around in it. And now that I finished Pelagos, I've got some more ideas, so I'll be expanding on it. But it's a little bit funny because when I was previously designing things, I ended up in this kind of unofficial cohort, other people making nautical horror games with like Oh Captain and Hell Whalers, and now I'm making religious horror games. Chaotic Stupid on Twitter just came out with a game, Fallen from Grace. There's still a little RPG about angels, morality, failure, and redemption.
Solo RPGs, they've been really going through a nice surge in the last year or so. It's been really cool to see so many new ones coming out and so many people working on them. Yeah, very cool.
It's been so much fun. And especially with Pelagos, one of the things I really want to do is do more crossovers. I really liked the idea that Triangle Agency and You're in Space and Everything is Fucked did, where they did a crossover of their two games. I think that's definitely an untapped area within the tabletop community and industry.
That's cool.
I know it's a lot of work, but that is something explicitly designed in Pelagos. We didn't reach any of those stretch goals on Crowdfunder, but I'm still going to do it anyway because it's my game.
Yeah.
And I got permission from the people I wanted to do crossovers with. But yeah, I can say pretty explicitly I want to do a crossover with Hell Whalers, Oh Captain, and I believe Mantle was the other one. But I think we honestly should be doing more crossovers of games that make sense to your game.
Yeah.
So as I designed, in the back of my mind, I've been thinking about like doing a Blue's Clues-esque tabletop RPG.
Oh my god.
That might use some of the mechanics from like Triangle Agency. I really love Triangle Agency because it really speaks to me as a government employee. So
Triangle Agency meets Blue's Clues. Man, that's a wild combination.
Yeah, I have a name and I have a basic idea. And now that Pelagos is done being game designed, I'm hopefully going to start turning out more games again. Yeah. While also pacing myself. I'm trying to be better this year about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Since I do have a day job and then I do this as well.
I was going to say, when do you have time for all this stuff? Yeah. Do you have any downtime?
Yeah, my downtime is usually weekends. But sometimes weekends also turn into work weekends where I do all my freelance stuff or game design.
And I suppose weekends is when you can do stuff like this and recording podcasts and stuff. Have you done any other APs?
Yes, I've been in a number of APs since I did Cybertopia.
Just because you're not busy enough.
Yeah, no, and I'm also volunteering for various things. Volunteer moderator for here, volunteer moderator for there. Helping out, recently did some moderating for Big Bad Online. Probably coming back to Big Bad Con this year and
that's cool.
Volunteering my time there. It's just like it never stops, but in a fun way. So I think I first started being on actual plays like last year. So yeah, I was in this Summer War / Digimon actual play for TransCon 2023. I was part of Oops, All Agender, where we played Slayers. For Sword and Key, we actually played Triangle Agency. That is probably one of my favorite APs that is out that I have done.
Cool.
Because my character, Patience, because I decided to continue the trend of naming my characters after nouns. I say with my name being Basil. So I was like, oh, I already have one character named Clarity. I might as well name this one Patience. Yeah, Patience Hollyhock. And if you have not seen this particular AP that I was in for Triangle Agency, you should check it out. It was a lot of fun. I decided for fun to play a character who had time hours, even though I have time aphasia, so time is just really messed up for me.
Hence the name Patience. That's kind of cool.
Yes. And there's actually an extra meaning with their last name being Hollyhock, but I will leave that to the flower meaning people to look up and know. I was also in a 2-shot with Madhouse RPG for All the Witches, and I have been in one other actual play, but it's not out yet. Ooh. So you'll just have to wait until it's released on Twitter, but I am very excited. We just wrapped up recording semi-recently. It was a lot of fun. Everyone had a great time.
Oh, the tease.
Yes, I'm very excited for it to come out. It was a wonderful experience. But yeah, I'm also looking forward to doing more actual plays. The only thing that's really stopping me is that, and this is no shade on anyone, most of them are either late at night on a weekday or during my work hours on a weekday, which I get.
Yeah.
For some people, this is their job, doing actual plays or just being in the tabletop industry. But for me, I have an in-person day job, which is why I'm trying to transition to at least a remote day job.
Yeah, I have similar scheduling difficulties because I've got a job, like a normal 9-to-5 day job, and I've got kids and family stuff, and especially with time zones because I'm in Europe as well. Yeah, finding the right times to be able to do stuff, and when other people have availabilities and stuff, I'd love to be in more actual place, but it is difficult to get the schedules right.
Yeah, the curse of tabletop, trying to find the right time.
But I suppose that's why Cybertopia kind of works out, because we do have this flexibility with the cast and stuff to be able to say, when are people available, rather than we need you at this time every week for the next year.
Yeah, and I do have some flexibility. Sometimes I'll do stuff late at night and then just deal with it in the morning.
Yeah.
It's just, I just don't think my boss would be cool with me recording at like 11 a.m., guys. Like, it's like, oh, no, don't. No, you don't hear anything coming from my office. It's fine. I'm still working, definitely. But it is what it is. And every time I get to be in an actual play, I'm super excited. And I love being able to create new characters and explore the space with other people.
Yeah, and you're great at this stuff. It just comes across so naturally and stuff. So it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what Clarity gets up to in season 2. So excited about that. One last thing, your at is what, Kobanya?
Yeah, so that's the fun thing about every time I have to tell people where I'm at. To whoever is still squatting on the at Kobanya handle on Twitter, give it up. You're ruining my branding, because I am Kobanya on Tumblr, Flowforts, Wibbler, and I think maybe also Blue Sky.
I've not even heard of Wibbler. That's a new one.
So I am Kobanya Kana on Twitter and I think Instagram.
Hopefully at some point in the future we will get to meet. I'd love to get over to the US and get to some of the US cons, because they seem like a whole different league compared to the European ones. And I don't even get to go to many of those, but maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day. I know I want to go overseas as well and check out some of the European ones. But I'm like, flights are 1, super long, and 2, super expensive.
Yep, very true. Cool. Well, I think we've kind of covered everything here. It's been wonderful chatting to you. and finding out about all of the things that you do and work on and what you've got coming up. And I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled for all the news of the things that you are secretly doing that you can't tell anybody about. But this was great and really excited for the future.
Likewise, the future is coming for us all.